안녕하세요. 여보세요입니다. 감사합니다. Rocket Punch. I believe Rocket Punch is another fourth gen group, like a newer, later generation group. I think they debuted in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And we're gonna check out Ring Ring, which I believe is sort of a retro informed type of track. So let's give it a listen. You know, it's interesting to me. I definitely appreciate the way that a lot of these younger generations, reference the sort of 80s new wave type of sound. I mean, it was new back then, right? But now it's a retro thing. Now it's retrospective. Of course, this is where we get synth wave, and what's the other one too? There's synth wave and retro wave, and I think originally I wasn't sure if this was going to directly sample something from aha, the Take on Me riff. It's not exactly that though. This is more like well, inspired by, like informed by, kind of created in the same vein as that. Um, but this that riff, that synth riff, the very high, like sparkly kind of buzzy synth sound. It's a sequence of descending sort of arpeggiations, right? Ding 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 ding, right? And the aha Take on Me song was, it had both descending and ascending arpeggiations in its overall structure. This kind of has a very, like, its direction is very consistent. Like it kind of is a bit of a. It's just a sequence of these descending sort of arpeggiations, these melodic phrases, right? And it's but it's nice. It's not overdone. In other words, I appreciate that it is its own thing, while also very obviously being informed by something from the past. That's good. Whenever somebody, even if you take an idea and just sort of use it as a basis for thinking up of something new, right, or something else. Of course, the entire thing is a retro, oriented type of song. But like I was saying, that's fun. It's fun for me because I grew up with so much of that sound. It was still very prevalent even in the 90s. I can turn on the radio today and sometimes I'll still hear songs from the 80s, and it would be like there's a lot you can do with that. And like there's plenty of other riffs, there's plenty of other themes and stuff that are still out there that can be used, you know what I mean? Like, and it would be fun. But this is it definitely has that fourth gen, like energy. It's interesting to see how much of the culture is like present in a lot of the fourth gen groups, right? Like they even lyrically, the things that they sort of sing about are like it's starting to be something you can identify, like, oh, okay. Even there's a line about how I like kitschy things, and there, I've did the song kitsch. I mean, these are interesting concepts to see how they're like they've sort of emerged in the culture, and they're so prevalent now that they're being used in a lot of this fourth gen music that's coming out now. At least, I mean, I think that's to see it even directly referenced, but even other things too that I see a lot of these fourth gen like music videos and the styles of music that they do. I'm like, it's very apparent what kind of cultural milieu there is, and it's cool. Like, it's I there's a lot of potential, and I definitely see a lot of potential in these groups. Rocket Punch, they sound very good. They have their own sort of rhythm and feel. I like, there's one thing that they do and that I always think is pretty cool. A lot of the in the verse, at least I noticed in the first verse, you have the beginning of a lyric, a line, let's say, And at first it might be one voice or maybe two that are kind of out front and center and really carrying the melody there, but then towards the end of that line there will be a harmonization with the backing vocals that come in, and it just takes that melodic line that is sort of its own rhythm, and then expands it, and really creates these different layers in it. And this isn't necessarily new to fourth gen. This you can hear this all over the place, in the different generations. Definitely in third gen for sure. But it's a great way to do your vocal lines and distributions and all of that. It adds color even in the space of like that single phrase. It's like really fast paced, which it's nice. It's nice and upbeat, but it's a very quick count. You have it's all very synth heavy, like you have that sort of sparkly buzzy sort of synth, high pitched sound for that main riff, and then there's additional synth sounds in there, and there's a very nice 808 actually. Like there's I think it comes in maybe like the second half of the verse, or perhaps it's pre-chorus. I'll try to see in a minute here, but it's a really good 808 sound. It's it's the particular synth, but also the way that it's handled in the production. It really stands out. While not, but it's not overpowering either. It's plenty of balance. There were some synth, like almost like pitch percussion, these sort of hits that again, it seemed like they were sort of outlining the chord at a certain part. I think was the bridge section. It occurred along lines with a pretty strong sort of contrast. So I want to say it was in the bridge section. But it's a very quick count. Okay, let's see. Great visuals. Oh. It was so right there in the beginning. You have two synth lines that are going on. You have the bass line, that's really just sustaining the root. It's like whole notes. You hear that, and then you have the little riffing that's going on over it, right? And it is pretty cool. They come in and as that intro progresses, right, it expands. All of those sounds really expand, and then there seem to be some sort of ambient risers also towards the end. They really just thicken like everything up, right? You start with these two synth lines that are somewhat narrow. There's not a lot being done with the space around them, and then towards the end of it, it really just like sort of swells up and becomes quite a saturated kind of texture. Oh yeah, and then the drums, like that's definitely the pads. You know what I mean? Like everything about this is super electronic, which is of course it's synthwave, but remember this is based off of that 80s sound, right? And the whole thing about the 80s was that we were going from analog to digital, so everything had that digital electronic type of sound to it. So this is actually pretty true to that as far as the song itself is concerned. Everything seemingly aside from the vocals is pretty much an electronic sort of synth derived sound. So stylistically, that's a very very like accurate and consistent. Oh, there's that 808. You already hear it. Really interesting because the rhythm contrast too. Like the synth bass that started was sustained whole notes, right? So each measure just playing the root of the chord. But now we're getting these little sort of triplets tied to probably like half notes, it feels like. It's so fast. You can hear the snare, you can hear the electronic snare that's accenting on the second and fourth beats, and then there's a hat that is like, it's really fast, but that's actually only the eighth note subdivision, so it's so quick, man. Like the tempo on this is actually really high. I'm driving you crazy, so 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4, right? So there's some nice contrasting rhythms that are going on. You had triplet groupings in the bass, that 808 bass sound, and then once it shifted and we kind of like the percussion became a little bit sort of ramped up a little bit, and then that triplet sort of rhythm also like transferred over to the vocal line. And so you can see in that like kind of that more narrow, high-pitched percussion that came in there, like that's only 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 40 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Like it's super fast, man. It really is. It's like such a an intense tempo. Their vocal lines, they're actually pretty smooth. I feel like there's some, like they could definitely develop a little, they can open up a little bit on some of the vocals. They're solid, and they're smooth enough to make it seem a little bit more laid back. Like when the vocal line is doing its thing and doing its rhythm, you really kind of can, latch on to that, right? And it doesn't feel like it's moving quite so fast. And then you get to a moment like that where the percussion starts to fill in those subdivisions on the beat, and if you realize like, wow, this is really moving. But it's kind of cool. It's really fun, actually. So there's at least 2 synth lines that are going, even before that riff came in. Like the bass synth part is still going, and then there's some other sort of brighter, lighter type of synth that's going on. It seemed mostly panned right. Like I hear a lot of this stuff in the right side, the higher end synth sounds, and they were very much sort of like behind the vocal. When before this riff comes in, you kind of have to listen a little bit closely, right? Because the vocal is very busy in that section specifically, and it's got most of that range, like most of that space where in the upper end, but there is this synth sort of arpeggiation that's going on, sort of like underneath or behind the vocal line. And then when that main riff comes in, that higher end synth sound really like sort of switches, and now it's over and in front of pretty much everything else. Yeah, the bass right here, man. That 808 and the kick. That's really good. This section right here, this sort of pre-chorus hook, this is I want to say this chord progression is also like it's also inspired by, you know, another one of those types of 80s songs. It has a, because it has a really strong feel. Like this section right here, it's very brief, right? It's just setting up, moving into that chorus section again. But when you hear this boom, 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 like that shifting away from that sort of 808 and kick, right? That nice like round, almost like bouncy, springy type of pocket there. Moving into this section, there's a lot of weight in the bass. It's actually quite dark. Like the space in between what this super heavy dark bass is doing, and then the like much more sprightly, sparkly stuff that's going on in the vocal. It's very, like, it works so well in this pre-chorus hook because it does feel sort of, it gives you a sense of anticipation, you know, like there's something coming. It's subtle, but you know, I guess within the song structure, it's probably doing everything that it can in this regard. I guess maybe if this approach is done differently, like in another song, it could probably be a little bit more like have a little bit more pull to it, you know. But it's somewhat subtle, but it does work. It does create this very anticipatory type of feeling because of this color shift whenever this bass part comes in, and then the percussion ramps up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's really fast. I like the choreography too. Yeah, definitely there. Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on in that sort of bridge section, the kind of breakdown. First of all, the piano chords are really nice in there. That's probably, it's an incredibly warm feeling. So when that piano sound comes in, right, and it's just hitting the chords, it's kind of mimicking what the bass is doing at the very beginning, because it's really it's hitting the whole notes. It's just chunking the chord for the entire measure, right? But because it's such a clean piano sound, like then aside from the vocals, like I said, if everything else in this mix is very electronic and digital, when that piano sound comes in playing those chords, it's the most organic type of instrumental sound in the mix, and it's quite warm, like really warm, and with everything else sort of dropping out in the mix, well, not everything else, but many of those synth parts, right? They drop out of the mix, and then you have that the sort of high note falsetto melody line in the vocal there, so it becomes extremely warm in this part, and it's kind of quick, right? Like it cools quite quite swiftly as the rap verses come in, right? The piano chords are still there, but then you start to have these little synth parts that come in, and a little bit of that sort of synthy pitched percussion that's going on, and then some straight up like shimmery, sparkly synth sounds. And the piano I hear mostly right, and then when those shimmery, sparkly synth hits start to come in, that's also like in the right. So the organic, like warm sound of that piano part starts to sort of like get enveloped or overtaken by the synth sounds again, and it's nice. This is what it's like a nod to that sort of nostalgic charm, you know, like, because it's like a memory, you know, like you have it, and then it's kind of like, oh, you know, it will pass, and you'll come back into the present moment, and that's kind of what that's like expressing or demonstrating the way that occurs in the mix. You know, because we all of a sudden it becomes like this very sweet sound, a warm sound, and then it shifts quite swiftly with you know, a lot of intention as the rap part comes in. Though great rhythms, great delivery on both parts, on the sung part and the melody part, and then also in the rap. So it's fairly strong, like the rap deliveries in this song. And then as the piano chord sort of gives way to those synth sounds again, it's the memory passing. That's like, okay, we're back, you know, in the moment now. Accentuated by that high note, right? These fourth gen groups, of course, they have a really great energy. It's very youthful. Obviously, that's part of where that energy comes from, because they're so young. I do enjoy like the nostalgia, though. It's strange, isn't it? They you know, they do songs like this, but I have said it before with like New Jeans and some of these other fourth gen groups as I discover them. While they have this very young sort of energy and take, some of the things that they do, especially if they're going to do like a retro style or whatever, they start to, you know, create this sense of nostalgia by both referencing something from the past and also being quite youthful in their whole energy and everything. That's going to further suggest that, like, it's going to remind, especially a listener like myself, of you know, being young and how it occurred back then, when a lot of these sounds were the current thing, like they were contemporary at that time. But this is it's a very fun song. I love the tempo. I love how upbeat it is. It actually has really great synth sounds. Like if you're going to do retro synth type of sounds, they're really good. They're really good. And the 808 and kick sound that was so nice. It's such a nice bouncy type of pocket on that. It's so subtle. The things that make this song good are subtle, and it might be due to how quick it is. Like, it might be due to how up tempo it is. Everything just kind of moves along, like, at such a deliberate pace. But you have that pre-chorus hook section with its color shift as the bass suddenly becomes very darker and seems to be much more expansive and deep, contrasted to the sort of melodic vocal work that's going on, and some sparse synth that's all very bright. So you have this strong contrast along the horizontal there, and that gives you that anticipatory sort of feeling, like that vibe that something's going to happen, and it ramps up the percussion and sort of slingshots you, or perhaps rocket punches you into the chorus, right? They have that nice riff that is informed by the Aha Take On Me riff, and then that bridge section, the way that the piano sound comes in as the mix sort of breaks down, and you get a very sort of how would you say, like because it's that warm piano sound, and the vocal reaches up into that falsetto range, so everything becomes very organic and warm right there. And then as it begins to go into the second half of that bridge section, the vocal tone shifts in its rhythm and its range, as with the rap section that comes in, and then all of these synth sounds start to slowly like overtake the piano chord sound, and it's sort of the I guess the least subtle moment is that high note at the end of the bridge section, but it again, that's sort of like that nostalgic feeling, that memory, really, really sort of reaching right there, trying to assert itself, and then right into the contemporary, like right back into the actual groove and mix and tempo of the song, right, the main part of the song. So it's got a lot of that charm, and I think some of it's like some of the best parts of it are a little bit subtle, but overall it's a really enjoyable song, and I continue to get like I enjoy the fourth gen groups. I think they're quite interesting. Some of the things that they do, that it's fun to see them sort of work out their style, like find their voice, find their sound, find the thing that it is that they do, and it's really interesting. I can go back and watch, like earlier generations, and I can see the same thing, but there is something to being present for like when it actually happens, being much closer to the time that these things are occurring in. And so, going forward to check out more stuff from more and more sort of fourth gen groups, it's going to get interesting, they're very good. Is the one thing is that each generation builds off of what the previous one did, and so, like, if you're not exceptional at all the different aspects of it, then you're not going to be very competitive. So that's one of the things that occurs, right? Is that all these groups have to be good. Like it has to be good, and they start off young, but they will improve over time. So that's one of the interesting things about it. But this was a fun song, and another sort of new group, a younger group, a fourth gen group to check out, and it'll be interesting to see more from them. See what else it is that they do. I know. Well, no, I think the members are still. It's still 6, right? I'm pretty sure it's still 6. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. Rocket Punch, Ring Ring. It's a fun song. It's a fun song, and it's a very cool way to do a retro sound, and it does make me curious about what else they're going to do. But Rocket Punch, Ring Ring. It is a fun time.